It's me again, or it's him again. Demetrius Andrade is back, and he made his return tonight at the Mohegan Sun Casino. It's the first time we've seen Andrade in the boxing ring since David Benavidez, much to my dismay, vanquished Demetrius Andrade in what was it, like six or seven rounds, something like that. Beat the hell out of Andrade, and Andrade, we really didn't see much nor hear much from Boo Boo over the last 3 years. A lot of us were speculating that he'd be retired, but look, he got tired of waiting for opportunity because he was, quiet as kept trying to get fights behind the scenes. I know a couple of fighters that he was trying to fight behind the scenes. Couldn't get those fights. Couldn't get any fights really against anybody. So he reached out. He reached out to Jimmy Birchfield and the fine folks at CES Boxing, and he decided to create an opportunity for himself. And they partnered up, and they did their own show. And they had a show out there tonight over there in Connecticut at the infamous Mohegan Sun Casino. And he fought Brazilian stiff Douglas Atade. I don't want to call him a stiff, but you know what I mean. The guy that was overmatched, the guy that was here to do a job and one job only, and that job was to get flatlined and get people excited about Demetrius Andrade again. And that's exactly what happened, as you guys saw in the beginning of this clip, of this video. He got caught with a right hook around the guard. Legs are motionless. He was on the ground, and that was all she wrote. So there really was a whole lot to dissect from Andrade in the fight. He still does a lot of the same things that made him a two-time world champion. Pot shotting, distance control, level changes, things like that. Throwing shots from angles that you don't really see. But again, it didn't go around, so you don't really know what Andrade's legs would look like. But I'll be honest with you, I feel like boxing fans and boxing people are just really miserable because the dude hasn't fought in 3 years. He's 37. The engine is not going to work the way it did when he was 27. You understand? So, it's a comeback fight in front of the hometown fans. He's not going to fight a killer. And, for not fighting a killer and just from a pure entertainment standpoint, I feel like the fight delivered. It was entertaining. And I'll say it like this, and I'll just say it bluntly. If we can't get Demetrius Andrade versus Jamal Charlo, but I got to watch Andrade fight a couple of stiffs overmatched opposition in New England, and he gets to knock them out, and we get a chance to just see him back in the ring and do his thing and be more aggressive and take chances, then I'm okay with it. Because how many times did we see Andrade fight guys when he was champion, top 15 guys, and not look exciting, not look great, but, still win? You understand? So if he's going to fight some stiffs and look great and get people excited, then so what? That's good for him. And I do think, in my opinion, talking about Andrade, I don't personally think that fights against guys like Billy or any of the current champions are like that realistic. I mean, I'm sure that's what he's going to want, and I'm not saying that he doesn't deserve those things if he gets active and gets an interest in him again and gets his name in the mix, which is what he's in the process of beginning right here. But I really think, for me, the fight is Jamal Charlo. The fight is Jamal Charlo. Andrade and both Charlo brothers, but, Big Charlo, Jamal Charlo, they got a long history, and they're both at the end of their career. They're both looking for one big fight. Say what you want about Jamal Charlo. I know he had his visa issues, so he couldn't fight on the Australia card with Earl Spence and all that, but Charlo's still undefeated. Nobody's beating him, and I don't care what you say. Jamal Charlo has one of the best jabs in the sport of boxing amongst active fighters. It's up there. It's in the top, 10 at least. One of the best jabs in the sport. It's an elite jab, right? So yeah, at this stage of their careers, at the end of their careers, where they're both looking for that one last big fight, I feel like them versus each other would be an awesome fight. It'd be an awesome fight at this point, and I actually think, with them fighting each other, it could give Andrade and Charlo some much needed respect that they're looking for at the end of their career. Because let's call it right, if Andrade rots away on the CES boxing cards in New England and knocks out stiffs, nothing will change. No one will care. And if Charlo just continues to have this chaotic career where he's fighting and not fighting and fighting and not fighting, nobody will care. But at least if they come together and they do a fight, that'll drum up some interest and get people talking about their names. And I think their styles will mesh very, very well. So I'm crossing my fingers, and hopefully we get Andrade versus Charlo. But yeah, Andrade went out over there in Connecticut, and he did what he was supposed to do. And they were saying that basically Andrade is supposed to fight again in November. That'll also be a CES Boxing Jimmy Birchfield card. So look, he's staying active. Isn't that lovely? You know, these are some of the things that we wanted to see from Andrade when he was younger. But you know, better late than never, right? Um, you know, he didn't box for a while, and he made light of this in a number of interviews. Shout out to Punch Drunk Boxing, but he made light of this, basically saying that you know, when Benavidez beat him and beat the brakes off of him, you know, he had a lot of things going on, as we all do. But you know, his brother had gotten shot, his mom, you know, was in the hospital going through a lot of health problems and things like that. You know, he really went through it, right? And so once he lost Benavidez, he took some time to deal with those issues in his family and process his own emotions of losing family members and family members going through health problems and things like that, which would affect anybody, let alone a top world-class 1% type athlete like Demetrius Andrade. But he's dealt with those things, and he's determined to try to make the best of what he has left in his career. And how could you fault a guy for that? You know, we could all sit here and say, oh, well, he didn't fight this guy, he ducked that guy, he should have did this, he didn't know the business of boxing in this regard and that regard. Because we can say all that about Andre, but you know, I commend him for trying to put his best foot forward with what's left of his career, and I really do wish him success. And I'm excited to see him back. And I'll tell you this, I think the Charlo fight is the most realistic, just because of how I know people in the fight game talk about Andre behind closed doors. But if we could get a world where we get an Andre versus Munguia, or if we can get could you imagine if we could get Andre versus Canelo? All those years I used to talk about Andre versus Canelo. I was pressing Canelo in person, yelling at him in real life about fighting Andre. You know, I would like that fight. You know, I don't think it's gonna happen. But I mean, if he can get any of the big names besides Charlo 168, Pacheco, Oslis Iglesias, and Billy, Lester Martinez, then why not? Why not? You only get one life. You know, make the most of it. You only get one boxing career. You make the most of it, and there's. You know, this might be the best part. It's possible that Andrade in his later years could actually win more fans than he did in the middle of his prime, because of where he's at and the fact that you might get a more desperate Andrade. You might get a Demetrius Andrade that winds up taking more chances and fighting in a more crowd-pleasing fashion, which, you know, hey, Mark Too Sharp Johnson was similar to Andrade in that regard. You know, one of his best wins was against Fernando Montiel, and that didn't come till the end of his career, and that's one of his best wins. So could be the same thing, right? What did Marvin Hagler say? You know, some fighters, you know, they do got 3 strikes against them. And, you know, and Andrade is black, he's southpaw, and he's really good. So that principle does hold true for a lot of fighters. But nonetheless, I'll leave it at that. You can leave your comments down below. What did you guys, what are the people? I want to hear from the people, the boxing community, because, you know, True School Sports, we the voice of the streets in boxing. This is like the Smack DVD of the Smack DVD of boxing YouTube, right? But hey, shout out to everybody out there. Let me know what you think. What do you guys think about Andre? What are some fights you want to see for Andre moving forward as he puts the finishing touches on his boxing career? Leave your comments down below, and I will see you guys in the next video.